Okay, very good. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm Christopher Roemmele from Westchester University in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the United States. And this project, I worked with my colleague, Thomas Pantases, who's in the Office of uh, Distance Learning and Instruction here on campus. And this is creating virtual reality and VR, virtual reality and video demonstrations to support student learning and understanding of geoscience. And just wanted to kind of give you some background about why video and the whole context of our research and the questions and our method of going around and collecting it, and then the process of the creation of these demonstration videos and the field trips, the virtual reality field trips, and then of course the impact of the videos on students. So why video? Video and visuals have an important role in instruction of science and in actual all subjects because they can eliminate time, place, and situational barriers to learning and thinking scientifically and promoting interaction between the students and the instructors and creating a more equitable and inclusive learning environment, regardless of the modality of the class, whether it's face-to-face in person, or it's a sort of hybrid, or it's entirely online. The usage and delivery of videos into curriculum of a science class, especially an introductory geoscience class, as a tool can help to positively impact student learning, outcomes, and performance. And so their cognitive behavior can certainly be influenced by their affective behavior because things like their interest and enthusiasm, their general attitudes and appreciation and value toward learning and learning science, and in this particular case, learning geology, is important to that science, to their cognitive gains. An experience with virtual reality to visit important, significant geologic locations can also provide an increased level of that interest and appreciation, as well as gains in geological content knowledge. And I'm going to be a little prejudiced here or biased with saying that geology is the meta science to address today's challenges that we face in society, anything that is related to climate change, natural hazard mitigation, energy resources, mineral resources, all those sorts of things. The geosciences is I'm not the only one to have said meta science, but it is certainly a way to investigate and understand and pose solutions to the challenges. And for students with limited science backgrounds and experiences, the use of dynamic visuals, such as video, as a tool can raise the student's interest and level on depth of understanding and awareness of geology that a textbook or a slideshow on its own simply cannot do. And so applying the various principles from cognitive theory of multimedia learning, which is about the use of visuals and audio combined in instruction, and how that is designed in lessons, but also how it's designed when you are creating an instructional video. And so that involves a number of different aspects of the cognitive load of students, and a number of these principles that we applied in the development and creation and final product of these demonstration videos and virtual reality field trips, such as embodiment, which is the use of body motions and human and gestures throughout the video, the personalization. So rather than being very technical talk and in terms of the language and the jargon, to have kind of a conversational and use colloquialisms throughout, and the use of a voice being present in the videos as opposed to a computer-generated voice. So lots of these were applied. And so our research questions in terms of conducting this was the impact, what was the impact on the video demonstrations and the field trips on an undergraduate introductory geology class that they have on student learning and performance, and does it improve student confidence and attitudes toward learning geology, and why the videos. And so our context in terms of collecting data over the course of 4 semesters. Some of that was in person, and some of that happened while we were at kind of the height of the COVID pandemic here, and we were online, delivering instruction online. It didn't matter because our videos were all in our learning management system, and so they were all accessible online, regardless whether the course was taught face-to-face in person or was done synchronously online or kind of a hybrid online. The data was collected from their quizzes that they took immediately following watching any of these videos, as well as exams throughout the course, and the qualitative data from their open-ended responses on surveys and questionnaires that we provided, and that was done at the end of the semester. And 117 students total, under all undergraduates in an introductory geology course taught by myself, assented to using their data, and all that data was easily collected in the learning management system where it was all stored. And so for each of the videos that was created, both the virtual reality and the demonstration videos, students access that on our learning management system. The video starts with the objectives, the learning objectives, followed by the primary content, and then ends with the restatement of the objectives. And students can stop and rewatch and rewind and pause and all sorts of things as many times as they like, but if they click to the next page, then they begin the questions following that, and there's anywhere from 5 to 10 or so questions regarding that specifically address the learning objectives. And they can't go back to watch the video once they start that quiz. Once they answer those questions, their last question is a confidence level question on a scale from 0 to 10 in half-point intervals, about how well they think they can meet those learning objectives. And this was a question, the confidence level question appeared again on the exams, because there were questions that were lifted from these quizzes that were taken immediately following watching the video and then put on the exams. And that was part of our the purpose of our data collection, to see how well they responded both after watching the video and then after that treatment during an exam situation. So after they asked that, answered that specific question that was lifted from the video, that confidence level question appeared again, about how confident they were that they got that question correct. So there was a battery of 14 different videos that were ultimately created. 4 of those were the virtual field trips, and some of these were the demonstration videos. And for the purpose of the research, we just used 4 of these, 2 of which were the demonstration videos. Those are pointed out, what's called the title of the video, The Relative Time Sandwich and the Milky Way Tectonics, and then 2 virtual field trips to Crater Lake National Park and Yosemite National Park here in the United States. I was the host of all of these and performed the demonstrations, usually with anywhere from 1 to 3 student assistants, often not just talking to them, but also talking and breaking down that 4th wall and talking to my audience and talking to my students who would be watching. So a very conversational piece. I was also the narrator of the virtual reality field trips, but I was not the person wearing the headset, simply because I hate to admit, but I am scared of heights and I get vertigo, so I was probably not the best person. So Tom, my collaborator in all of this, bravely faced that task of guiding around with the Oculus headset. And in terms of designing the videos and ultimately editing things like that, it was key terms in terms of the voice, and that it was my voice or my students' voices, as well as I was the narrator. I was the instructor of the course, and so they were familiar with my voice. The motions that I went through, the just everyday actions and gestures throughout. I was also green screened in on some of the parts of the virtual field trips, so that they would see me acting out a little bit as well, and on the field trips. And the personalization, again, the conversational, colloquial talking style I was a middle school and high school classroom teacher for 15 years. So kind of just relating it on a conversational style rather than a very technical, disaffected talk was important to maintain student interest. And so some of those aspects of CTM, of temporal contiguity, in terms of being able to show images and talk about it, but not necessarily mimic the words that were on the screen and word for word. So it wasn't a directly off of that. I was making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and cutting it into pieces to demonstrate a concept that's called the cross-cutting relationships, and how we determine which rock features are older or younger than what's around it. And so showing visual examples and having the signaling as well. So there were lots of different ones going on, the spatial contiguity of where the words are, how they appeared, where the pictures were, and again, not necessarily duplicating those words, but talking about it in context of a cinder cone volcano that appeared in the middle of Crater Lake National Park. And lots of signaling, lots of moving arrows, coloring shaded areas and things like that, labels, all to indicate what was happening and why it was happening as well. So lots of principles of the CTML being applied. And while you can sit in your office or sit in home and film yourself on your own iPhone or Droid phone, how do we be different? How can we be different and better than what's already out there? Because on social media, there may be various demonstrations, but we wanted to make sure that they were a little different and that there would be the advantages of a professionally made video and that students could have access to. So a certain amount of fun, and again, that colloquial conversational style and the interactions between myself and my student helpers, especially in the demos, was important. The use of analogies and using those everyday food items and materials that students could relate to. The use of virtual reality, again, for a lot of students in the United States, they don't take earth science. It's not a course that is as popularly or as commonly taught as a biology class or even chemistry or physics. And so geological earth science understanding or knowledge, I would say, is on the lower side of that spectrum. And so bringing students who may not have ever taken field trips to important and significant geological locations, especially in terms of making it an equitable and inclusive learning environment, is important. And then being a classroom teacher for 15 years, the idea of a lesson plan and a storyline and a narrative is critical to me at this point, because I teach science methods class. I teach how to teach science as well here at Westchester. So the whole designing of the script was important, and that is important, especially when you have multiple people involved, as well as a film crew with different cameras and where to look, where to stand, how to hit your mark. And so the repetition of refilming the activities, the demonstrations from different angles, slowing it down, making sure that everybody's in the right spot, and making sure I'm always on my best side, right? And then, of course, the editing of that with the staff and the interns in our digital media center to put all of these film edits together, as well as all the pop-ups and other things and other aspects of CTML that we wanted to apply to get these to be professionally looking. And so, again, in that battery of demonstration videos, things about geologic time, both from a relative age and an absolute age, and plotting using M&Ms and popcorn to simulate half-life decay of radioactive decay, and how to simulate seafloor spreading and plate tectonics or continental drift, torn pieces of a newspaper, since that was the actual analogy that Alfred Wegener used himself a century ago. Everyday materials, again, to demonstrate lava viscosity and how that influences lava flows, and how that influences volcanic explosivity when you're using things like blowing bubbles into a glass of milk, or as opposed to a milkshake, and the outcomes that you can get with that. And again, everyday materials to demonstrate elasticity and rebound, like rubber bands and wooden dowels and coils for seismic waves and things like that. So the making the virtual field trips just as detailed and intense, again with the equipment, and again who's going to be steering, who's going to be in the headset, and who's going to be watching. As it turns out, Tom, my colleague, was the one in the headset, and I would watch what happens in the video on screen. Um, and that takes time because we're always interested in making sure that when you go from flying around to street level, to make it as seamless as possible, so that it's not this kind of awkward transition going from one place to another. And then speaking of that, how do you go from one place to another when you're in a large place like Yosemite National Park or Crater Lake, or you're flying along the San Andreas Fault in California, where to stop, how to make those visits and at each point effective so that students are actually seeing and gathering the most content for the time that they're watching it. So the impact on students, well, it turns out that the student data, here in this table, we're looking at their performance on particular questions, that 2 questions in particular from each of the 4 videos that were part of this project, a part of this research. And so we're looking at the percentage of students that got the question right on these 2 questions from the relative time sandwich, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich that was made. So good percentages here, strong, over 80%. And in terms of how many students got it, that same question literally lifted, that same question was lifted out of the video quiz and into the exam, so that we can compare and contrast the percent correct. And we're looking at improvements in most of them, and statistically significant to at least to a 0.05. A few of them, only one of those questions actually went down, which was ironically, or interestingly enough, the lowest confidence level rating, although that was not a statistically significant decrease in their confidence level for that question. When we look at the crosstabs of all of this and the individual videos, and the question pairs in terms of how many students got it right both times, both in the quiz right after watching the video and on the exam, that's always a very strong number with all 4 of our videos and all 8 of our questions. And I think the other important row in each of these tables is to look at the number of, they got it wrong on the quiz, but they got it right on the exam. We can't necessarily make that correlation and say, oh, it must have been the video that corrected everything. But it is a small but healthy batch in each of these videos, in each of the videos that were used for the research, to show that they went from wrong to right. And the numbers of students who went from right to wrong, and wrong both times in our student sample, was relatively low. And also, interestingly enough, the confidence levels were lower, although it's hard to say anything is significant when we're only at an N of 1 or 2 students in that little batch there. But overall, a pretty strong performance across from the quiz to the exam. The qualitative data for the responses in the surveys collected at the end of the semester in terms of how, I'm going to move that a little, how does learning from the videos compare to reading from a text and viewing a PowerPoint slideshow? In terms of, we had 52 students respond completely to all of these these questions. And in terms of, we did obviously to look for themes, emergent themes, and phrases and words that were repeated, and then do a count independently, both of us, and then collaborate and reach consensus on the numbers of times and where categories we're kind of combining there that these responses fell into. So we obviously see a number of students use the phrase that they liked or preferred, or the videos over text, that it was easier to understand, and that they declared themselves to be visual learners. And that was a very common phrase, that real life examples or places were used, and that the pop-ups in terms of the definitions, and that there was also the speaking component combined with that, and that the interactive nature, and that's what we mean, students further clarified that as being able to stop, to repeat, to pause, and to go back to watch these videos. And was there a specific aspect? The analogies was the most common response, that everyday items were used that students can relate to, and that not just for the physical items, but the verbal analogies that were used in throughout the videos as well. And again, the pop-up nature, the use of words, and both the spoken word, the written word, and the visual nature appearing multiple times. And then thought it was interesting that they kept mentioning few of the students were mentioning me, that I appeared in these videos, and that was helpful to them, I guess, because I'm their professor as well. So it's kind of interesting there. And some just phrases that wanted to put in here to get a picture in their head about what these places and features looked like. They personally enjoyed. There's somebody that mentions me. Again, following my hands and reading my lips increased greatly. Much better than just a picture. Made a better way to see the locations that we were discussing in class. The use of food and objects that they were familiar with. I do a lot better with analogies, so that would have been put into the analogy count. I could pause, so that interactive nature, extra time to copy down notes, help me visualize, so that whole idea of the visualization, probably mentioning that they were a visual learner as well, taking a field trip without actually having to, and easier compared to readings, whether it's the text or the slideshows. And again, looking better than looking at a text or slideshow. And so our conclusions, to kind of answer our research questions, that the use of the videos in VR definitely had a positive impact on student learning of the concepts. There was an overall strong performance and generally high confidence level, more pronounced after the exam items as compared to after they watched the videos, which was data that wasn't actually presented in here, but it was also a part of research. And participants generally enjoyed their experience as using the videos and VR as a learning instrument. And then our recommendations, we would strongly recommend that science instructors at all levels, especially at the post-secondary, develop their own instructional videos as a means of improving conceptual understanding amongst students. What that can be done by reaching out to a digital media center or video production unit, perhaps the public relations unit at a university, to provide instructors or interns, staff who could help creating those videos to make a more interactive and dynamic learning experience. And we feel that that will allow students to learn and think critically and lead to increased levels of science literacy, important these days, and to place a greater value on science and also on our planet as a whole, regardless of whether we're teaching in the geosciences or any of the sciences as well. So, and that's it. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.